What's up, everyone? Welcome to Unmasked, where things are discovered, uncovered, brought to the light, and made known. I'm your host, Lamar Barrett, coming live to you from PG County, Maryland. If you're interested in finding out about the untold stories behind being a college coach, this is the show for you. Being a former assistant men's college basketball coach for 16 years, there are so many untold stories behind the scenes in the life of a college basketball coach. Now, let's unmask them. Today's guest is a longtime assistant coach. And when I say long time in this business, if you've been in 10 years now, recently, you've been in a long time already. But one of the young and brightest coaches in the business, a future head coach in my eyes, and a Radford, Virginia native, Darius Nichols. Now, Darris was a outstanding player at the University of West Virginia for 4 years, played for Beeline, Coach Beeline, for 3 years, and Coach Huggins for 1 year at West Virginia. And then after he finished playing, he played a year over in Europe professionally. Came back home after that year and decided to go to grad school, or he became a graduate staff assistant. Shortly after that, and then 11 to 13, he ended up going to Northern Kentucky, where he was an assistant coach. And after 1 year, he goes to Wofford. He worked for Mike Young at Wofford University, actually where his brother Shane played. His 3 outstanding years there. And then he La Tech for 1 year, where actually I had a chance to coach against them. They won the regular season with Coach Mike White when I was at Old Dominion. They had a great year. Player of the year that year, was in the league. And then he's still, presently, he's with Coach White at the University of Florida, where they're doing an outstanding job at the University of Florida. I want to say welcome to the show, Darris.
LB, I appreciate you having me, man. I'm excited to chop it up with you.
Okay. Well, we're going to see, man. Let's go ahead and get unmasked since you're excited.
Yeah.
You come back home after finished playing, obviously coaching, was in your blood. Your dad coached, your brother started coaching as well early. So we all know that there's no handbook to being a college coach.
Right.
Tell me about your first day, first week, first month after things are done with human resources, especially when no one gives you direction. Now, you've been a graduate staff assistant, one thing. You going to Northern Kentucky for the first time, there's another thing.
Yeah.
But because no one gives you direction. They just tell you, they jump right on in. You kind of have your own feel. What was that like?
It was different because Northern Kentucky at the time, we were D2. So the first year I was there, we were D2. And it was crazy because, at the D2 level, I didn't really understand how good Division II basketball was at the time. I'm coming from playing in the Big East, so I'm thinking, okay, maybe these guys aren't very good, but the league we were in, which was the GOVC, was one of the best leagues in the country. So I remember I worked for a guy named Dave Beazle, and he told me, he said, just because you're a good player, don't expect guys to know what you know. And so, I had to look at it that way because you think if you've been playing basketball longer than some of the kids have been living, or coaching basketball, longer than some of the kids are living, and it's different. So that opened up my eyes right there to college basketball and coaching. And a lot of the dudes on my team, coming from D2, there were some dudes on my team that we had one guy that was 2 years older than me, and we had another guy who's 1 year younger than me. So I was like, I had to learn to be myself. It wasn't like I was coming in there trying to be, okay, this father figure or authoritative figure. I just had to learn how to be myself.
Awesome. Now, we all know that recruiting is the lifeline of college athletics.
Right.
Good players, good people, it translates a lot of times to wins for a majority, especially when you have that combination. Like, what was your best and worst recruiting stories?
So I'm gonna give you the best. I'm gonna give you the best first. So the best was probably when I was at Wofford. A kid named Cam Jackson. He's from Winchester, Virginia. Big kid. So, you know, I go up there and I'm recruiting them. And at the time, you know, Cam was a little bit chubby, and I was like, you know, he's chubby, he's skilled. I don't know how good of a player he's gonna be. So, like in recruiting, you know how it is. You've been doing it for a long time. There's a lot of people that's gonna lie to you and say, "Oh, this is the hardest working kid I've ever been around. Oh, unbelievable, you know, gym rat, whatever." So, you know, I wasn't that old, but I try to find stories of that work ethic. So at this time, Cam Jackson, he was working at Chick-fil-A. You know, his mom had a job, but he also wanted to help his mom on the side. So I said, you know, I'm talking to Cam. I'm like, you know, how do you get to work every day? He said, I walk. I said, okay, that's pretty cool. So then I go up there one time and I'm recruiting him, and I go over to that Chick-fil-A. So I'm talking to his manager. I asked him, I say, you know, how's Cam as a worker? He said, unbelievable worker. The only problem with it is, like, you know, sometimes he's, you know, a few minutes late to work, but you know, he walks to and from work. So I'm like, okay, this kid's walking to and from work after basketball practice and all this stuff. So I pull up, I get his address. So I calculate, you know, from where he lives to that Chick-fil-A, and it's 2 miles each way. So I'm saying this kid walks to and from work after practice just to help his mom. And so then that's when I called Coach Young and I said, Coach Young, this dude's gonna be an all-conference player for you. I said, like, forget how he looks right now. Like, he's got something in him to where he cares about people. He cares enough about his mom, and you know, he's not afraid to work. So, you know, I was at Wofford for a year, and then I want to say his last 2 years he was all conference. So I mean, it's not like I knew that, but just those stories to back up, you know, how kids are going to be, I think is really big in this business. As far as the worst, probably the worst is when I was recruiting. You know, I was recruiting a kid, and I'm still cool with him and his dad today. The kid Aaron Neesmith that went to Vanderbilt. So we were in there. So, you know, we're recruiting him. You know, he has a decision made, and we're like, okay, you know, we need to fly up there to see you one last time before you announce it. So, you know, kids usually have their decision made up before you go up there. So, you know, we fly up to Charleston, we're hanging out, blah, blah, blah. And then, you know, the kid's making his decision the next day. So the kid chooses Vanderbilt. So I'm thinking, just let us know instead of wasting time, because you know how it is as college coaches, you get told no way more than you get told yes. Like, we're used to being rejected. We're okay with it. So he knew at the time and then didn't tell us. But, you know, that's probably not the worst story, but there are a lot of stories like that where you waste time in the 11th hour that you could have eliminated. But I know sometimes a lot of these kids don't want their story leaked out because some of these schools will sabotage the kid's moment.
So true, man. And you're right about that. Like, the best answer we want to hear is yes. Second best answer we want to hear is no. Because you don't want, like you said, don't waste the time. We can, we like, we're grown men, we can take no as an answer, and move on and recruit someone else. But so the waste time is the one thing. I always said that in recruiting. Best answer you can give me is yes. Second best answer is no. So.
No question.
Now you're a family person. Like your family, and your brother actually talked about it, how, you know, when he was at Wofford, how he would, you know, drive home and see his friends. It wasn't that far of a ride for him, but like, now, what did you have to give up achieving your current level of success?
I would say the thing you have to give up the most is time. And I think in this profession, I don't think people understand how much time goes into it. You know, there's certain months where you have free time, and it's not necessarily free time. It's just more free time than you usually have. So I think a lot of people think, you know, they look at college basketball, to them it's entertainment. To us, it's work. So you give up a lot of time, but then when you do have that time, it goes to being with your family or whatever. So that's the thing you're giving up, because as a player, you don't really understand what goes on in terms of college basketball. Like, you know, when I was playing, I used to see all the coaches, you know, on the computer all the time, and I'm like, these dudes, like, I guess they watch film all day. I don't know what they do, but it seemed like it was really easy. But behind the scenes, it's, you know, dealing with different families, different situations, and there's nothing that you're prepared for. So most of the stuff that happens to you is how you're gonna respond to it. So I think the thing with me is just that time that goes into it of being successful, and then just being flexible. You have to be flexible because I mean, you're in the business of athletics.
So true, man. So true. People always be like, can you go on this trip? Like, no, like,
No,
what's your downtime? There is no downtime.
Yeah.
They don't get that part of it. That's what I love. I
Right.
love when people ask that question. So what do you do when the season is over with? Still work?
Recruit, yeah. And then you get those texts on the weekend. That's like, you know, what you want to do Saturday? I'm like, we practice. I got film to watch. Like, I mean, on your off day, your mandatory off day, you're usually out recruiting. So it's like, yeah, you're giving up your time. But I mean, for me, it's not like, I don't look at it as work, so I don't mind putting that time into it. If you work with people you really enjoy being around.
So true, man. Now we all know this too. You scouting reports, how important they are, and to you can always tell whose scout it is when they're on the sideline. Like, who's the most active, you know, or when the coach turns his head and, you know, you missed, you just told coach, like, well, he's an okay shooter. He's not a great shooter, and this kid will knock down 2 or 3 in a row because he's only made 2 on the season or something like that. But what was your best and worst scouting report? Because sometimes we know that you can have locked in, know everything. You know every call, like everything is done. But then the players go out and perform, and it's like, yo, like, what are y'all doing? Or like you got your, I'm gonna say not worse, but like not as great. You might have missed a couple of things. You win by 20. But what was your best and worst scouting report?
My best would probably be, you know what? This is probably my best. I think when we play West Virginia. I think so. You know, I usually have the scout. So, you know, when we play them, like a lot of the play calls and stuff that, you know, Hugs has been doing have been, you know, similar over the years. So I can lock into it. I understand how to guard it. So when we play them, you know, and that's why he's so successful, is because he's going to do a lot of the same stuff he's been doing over the years. But like when you have an inside track of it, then you can understand how to guard it. So, you know, pretty much every time we play them, it's probably been my best. My worst, you know, it's crazy because usually your worst scouting reports are the best teams. So you are the best teams in the league. It's like you try to overanalyze it. It's like, you know, you watching Kentucky and everybody says, oh, you know, Kentucky doesn't run much. Well, a lot of times they don't need to run that much. So then you spend all your time like, okay, how are we gonna stop this? So a lot of times you just out there guessing. You know, so a lot of people say, oh man, that was a great scout. I'm like, man, when you have no other options, then it's easy to make decisions. So I would say probably the worst, usually the teams that are the best in the league, you know, Kentucky's, Tennessee's, like those are the worst. I can't really pinpoint one specific time, but the worst is when, you know, you say a kid's a non-shooter, but then you got to try to say stuff like, you know, and then he makes a 3, and then your players look over at you. I'm saying, like, he's a Division I basketball player. He can make a wide open 3. So, but sometimes we tell them, we say, look, that's on us. That's on us.
So true, man. So true. Speaking right about the caliper, I had that scout one time in my career, and that was when they had De'Aaron Fox, Bam Adebayo, and Malik Monk. So I can tell you, like, it had nothing to do with the scout. It had a lot to do with those pros.
Right.
Biggest challenge you think you've experienced since you've become a college coach?
I would say when we made the transition from Louisiana Tech to Florida, and you know, we're following, you know, Billy Donovan and all the success he's had here. I think, you know, especially the first time we stepped on campus. So I'll give you a story. You know, we got the job, I think it was May. You know, the draft is in June every year. So we're calling all these kids, and, you know, we're kind of in scramble mode, trying to recruit kids that are a year out. I can't remember what class it was, maybe 2015, 2016, whatever. But you got to think at the high major level, you're recruiting kids for 4 or 5 years. But at that time, we didn't really understand that. So we're sitting at a local burger spot here in town in Gainesville watching the NBA draft. So, you know, every kid in the country is watching the NBA draft because that's where they want to be. So, you know, we're calling these kids and selling them on Florida, you know, whatever, pros. And then I look up at the screen, I see Calipari, and he's bouncing from table to table. So when I see that, I'm like, hey, we're wasting our time. We're at this burger spot, and some of these coaches are at the actual draft. And I said, okay, it's probably time to hang up the phone because we're not getting these kids in this class right here. We need to focus on some of the younger kids. So I think just jumping from that mid-major level to the high major in terms of recruiting, because, you know, sometimes when we first got there, we was like, you know, who's there? Is Coach Donovan? You work for Billy Donovan? I'm like, nah, he's gone. But, you know, they didn't know who we were. So, you know, just taking that time over the last few years and just, you know, building up your contacts and people getting to know you, that's the hardest part. Because, you know, those first few years, it was really hard to get involved with really good players.
Gotcha on that one. Now, do you ever find that there are things about you that people misunderstand, or what are they, if there is?
I don't know. I think a lot of people. I don't know. I think a lot of people in this business, like, you know, when I'm on the road, like, I could probably come off as like, you know, antisocial dude or whatever, but, you know, when I go on the road, like, I'm locked in. You know, I'm watching the game, I'm watching the parents, I'm watching everything. So, you know, a lot of people you see around the gym, they sitting there talking, and I'll talk, but, you know, it's going to be halftime and, you know, after the game and all that. So I think in this business, a lot of times people think that, you know, I'm pretty antisocial, but when I'm on the road or whatever it may be, like, I'm trying to lock in.
I mean, and that's what a lot of people, you know, you're in the same boat. Like, you know, people just got a misconception about them. Like, no, I'm in here, I'm business, and then I'll talk to you afterwards. I mean, that's just what it is. What are your best and worst memories in coaching?
My best memories are, and it's not necessarily like specific moments. It's just the frustrating part about coaching is when guys don't get it right away. And you know, we always, as coaches, we kind of contradict ourselves. We say, oh, trust the process. But then we get frustrated when the process ain't fast enough. So it's like, it's kind of crazy, but the best moments I have, obviously, you know, winning the championships and stuff like that, is when former players text me and they say certain things like, hey, coach, like, I didn't get it then, but I appreciate it. Like, I always tell the guys now, like, you're going to appreciate me more when you're gone than when you're here. And then when you get those text messages, or, you know, a kid, one of the players has a baby or something like that, and they want you to be involved or whatever, those are probably the best moments. Because, you know, that's the reason why I got into it. You know, I didn't know I'd be at the high major level. It just kind of happened. But the reason why I got into coaching is to make an impact. But I would say the worst moments are just losses. Like, after you lose, you know what I'm saying? Like, because I don't think winning is like, I don't think you're necessarily excited to win. I think it's more of a sigh of relief. Like, you're relieved that you won. So then when you lose, it's like, okay, I can't wait to get back on the court. Like, I'm never, like, after a loss, you know, I'm just quiet. You know, I'm just kind of reserved because I don't want to come off and say the wrong things to, you know, players or anybody. So I'm just kind of reserved after a loss. But once I get back on the practice floor, I'm good. I'm good because I'm trying to figure out a way to fix it or to get better. But just after those losses, man, you know how it is. When you win, you're just relieved for a few hours, and then you're like, oh man, we got to play in 2 more days.
So true, man. Like, because like, I could go home, and you just said that, it's interesting. After a win, man, you go home, you might lay on the couch for a little while. Just, you know what I'm saying? Like, you relax.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a relief. You
you know what?
lose. You sitting there, you pouting all night, can't go to sleep thinking about what we did. Like, it's like helter skelter, man. And a lot of times you're like, I mean, you get in this business, you understand what you're getting, and it's a part of it.
And I'm gonna tell you the best part about a win though is checking the scores after you win. Like ESPN, checking the ticker, you scroll through the scores. When you win, you scroll through the scores with confidence. When you lose, you don't want to see any scores. But you will when you lose and you look at scores and you get excited. Like, it's kind of like some hater stuff. You get excited when a team in your league loses too. You like, oh yeah, they lost too, so we're good for right now.
Yes, you're so right. You're so right.
Yeah.
What was the most stressful situation you think you faced?
The most stressful situation. I don't think it's necessarily one particular moment. I think the most stress is usually, when is it? September to November. And you know why. You know why. Because September to November is decision-making time for recruiting. So I think, like, a lot of people say, oh, July is hard. That's, recruiting. July, you're just evaluating. You're going to show face. Then when it comes down to decision making, and those are usually September and November, November signing day and stuff like that. Now those are stressful situations because you're just thinking like, okay, how do we close this? What if we don't get this dude? When do we bring this kid in? Like, it's a whole bunch of decisions that could impact your team in the next few years. So like September to November, like, I'm a different person. Like July is fine. Everybody talks about July being hard, but it's not.
I like that answer. That is pretty smart. And, like, even when you get the commitment, like, you still got to work even harder because you're like, man, we got to get to November. We got to get to this signing day. Because then everyone, so people, you viewers, you listening, even though when a kid commits, teams know who to battle. They only battle against Florida now, or they only battle against, another team. So guys still contact these players somehow. So it just doesn't stop because a kid committed. You got to make sure you're still recruiting him until he signs. Yeah. What is the strangest thing a player, or different, that a player has done outside of the basketball court?
The strangest thing. Oh, yeah, I got one. I was at Northern Kentucky. I was at Northern Kentucky. We had a guy. I'm not going to say his name. I'm not going to say his name because he's in coaching right now, but he's grown up a lot, so I'm not going to say his name. So we had trouble with this dude going to class. So he would, you kind of had to babysit him. You had to follow him around. You had to call him, check on him all the time. But I mean, he was a really good player. So, you had to make sure he was successful. So I went to check his class. And then, so it was kind of like one of those stadium seating classes where the rows go up so you can look in the window and kind of see all the way up the rows. So I called him. I didn't see him in the classroom. So I was like, hey, where you at? He said, I'm in class. And I was like, I don't see you in there. Like, I just left. You weren't in there. He said, yeah, I was in there. I was like, well, I didn't see you. Like, I don't think you're in there. He said, yeah, I got tired. I'm laying on the floor. So I'm like, all right, well, you obviously missed the whole point of going to class. So never mind. Just whatever. I told my boss, I said, he was in there. He was just laying down sleep.
Laying down sleep. Wow. He went. He went.
He was there. He was there. He told, we told him you got to go to class. I guess we got to be more specific.
There's another one people don't understand. You coach, you babysit, you're a psychologist. So it's a lot of work. Wear a lot of hats. Now, obviously, like I said earlier, you're in a great situation. I mean, you trust me. You put in the work. You're a great player. You actually, you've been to some good places. You work for some good people. And you said it, but like, hey, it happened, man. Like, you in the right place, right time. You're at the highest level, SEC basketball, Power 5. and you work for a great head coach now and great AD. Like, but it's time to, like, you've done the Top Connect, I believe. But if you had a chance to work for anyone in men's college basketball, like, who would that be and why? When I say that, I'm more thinking AD, because you probably come across some of those people now. Besides the ones at Florida, like, who would you be? Have you like looked at some programs and be like, oh, these are some really good ADs there?
I haven't really thought about it in terms of ADs. I have certain schools that I like, because it's crazy now because ADs move around just as much as coaches, if not more. But me, I'm from Virginia, so there's a few schools in Virginia that I really like. Obviously Old Dominion, I love that spot where you was at. But as far as ADs, nobody in particular. There's a few presidents I like, but it's kind of hard because, like, when you're an assistant coaching position, like, you meet a lot of these ADs and not necessarily presidents, but you meet a lot of ADs through the stuff that you say, like Top Connect and Next Chair. But it's more so about, you meet these ADs, but you got to cultivate relationships. Like, it just doesn't, okay, because we went speed dating, now I think you're cool and you think I'm cool. It's just like on the road, a lot of dudes that, would seem cool to work for, and then you hear horror stories about working for them. So, I can't really put myself in that situation of saying, who exactly I would like to work for, because I don't know them in terms of the working side of it.
Great answer, man. That's a great answer.
Yeah.
Biggest accomplishment, and you kind of said something earlier, and it may tie hand in hand, but like the biggest accomplishment you have experienced since you've been in college coaching.
Biggest accomplishment I would say on the floor was when I was at Wofford. That year I was at Wofford, I think, we had a whole new staff come in to work for Mike Young, all 3 new assistants. So we were preseason picked to finish like 9th in the league or something. I don't know. We weren't going to be very good. But then we ended up winning the league. We went to the NCAA tournament, won the SoCon tournament. And I've never been as nervous as I was that time, just being in a single bid league. Like, I don't think people understand how nerve-wracking that is to have to, win the conference tournament to get in the NCAA tournament. So that was the hardest thing on the court, was just winning those games and getting to the tournament. So I think that was a big accomplishment. I would say the others, just like I said, just seeing guys be successful. Just seeing guys making money in the NBA, overseas, and just when you get those text messages or calls, and they just, especially out of the blue, like when you're just sitting there, whatever you're doing, and I know you've gotten them before too, and you just get a random text message from a player, and he's just talking about how much he appreciates you helping, because it's like, you really made an impact. So those are the best moments for me.
Awesome, man. And this might stump you a little bit. Maybe what movie or TV show title best describes your week?
My week? Oh man. TV show or movie title?
Yes, sir.
TV show. Oh man. You know what? I would say the movie title, and I'm correlating this movie to kind of like the dudes I grew up with, and you've seen it's a classic. To me, it is the movie The Wood.
Oh, okay.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just like, all the dudes you grew up with, and they're your closest dudes. So like, whatever's going on in that movie is like what we grew up, how we grew up, and then how we still are to this day. Because I don't, to me, I don't let a lot of people in. Like, you have certain types of friends, I think. And the dudes you grow up with are like those dudes from that movie. So that's kind of how That's kind of how I am.
I like that. I like that. The wood. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
I forgot what your brother said. I gotta go back and look it
He
up.
better not. I know he didn't say the same thing I said though.
I don't think he did, but
Yeah.
I think he had an interesting answer as well.
Yeah. You got some tough questions, man. You making dudes think on this, man. I went and watched some other episodes. I was like, hold on, man. I was like, there's no way I can be prepared for what LB's gonna ask though.
No, that's what I like, because like even
Right.
though you see it, like I have is amazing. Like it's a ton of questions. It's like, okay, where I'm gonna pick them from, and it's all a feel as I'm talking. But what's your favorite word or phrase? Like you might have one you in practice. It may be the game. It could be just talking to players. But like, what's your favorite word or phrase?
My favorite phrase, especially with these kids today, I always tell them, listen to learn, don't listen to respond. And I think that's like in the climate we're in right now, and you know the racial justices, and you know how we're finally listening to each other talk right now. I think people are finally listening to learn a little bit. And I hope it can stay that way. I hope it can stay that way, but who knows?
I really like that. Listen to the learn, don't listen to respond.
Because you know you've coached a guy and you would get ready to say something to him, and they say something like, "Hold on, you don't even know what I'm about to say yet, and you're already defending yourself."
I think it's this generation. Like it's this generation, and I didn't realize how bad it was until I used to sit and you wonder. You know, like you say some of these guys, and they're kind of right, because I started studying like the generation Z or X or whatever, and it's like, no, they just see things totally different than you do. Like us as players, you were always told what to do, you know, and this was the way it's supposed to be done, no matter what, and you listen. Whereas these guys are like, yeah, you're telling me to run through that wall, but I can still get to the other side by climbing over top or going around. And we don't see it that way because we were told, no, run through the wall.
Yeah.
You know, so
you know why I think it's like that. I think it's different because these kids now actually have a voice and they can express themselves better than we could when we grew up. You know, when we grew up, it was like we couldn't get on social media and say how we felt. Or not even say how you feel, you type how you feel, whatever. But you know, it's like, hey, don't you talking around grown people, don't say, like, be quiet. Don't nobody care about all that. So now with these kids, they have a voice that we weren't allowed as much to use, or it didn't matter. So I think that's a combination of why it is like that too. But just listen before you give me that voice, and I'll listen to you as well.
I like that. I definitely like that one. I'm writing that one down, man. What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Man, I've gotten a lot. I would say how you do anything is how you do everything. And not necessarily like, I don't even remember who gave that to me, but I heard it before, and then I thought about it, and it's like, you know, dudes who take, you know, especially in what we do, like, especially, you know, with academics and stuff like that. And a lot of kids don't think that academics is important, but, you know, to some people, it may not be as important. But in life and whatever you decide to do, there's going to be things you don't feel like doing. So you still have to do them to be successful. So I always think, like, when somebody gave me that advice, I always think about how that correlates to a lot of things.
Man, you dropping some real nuggets over here. I like this.
That's all I got. I'm out.
What does success mean to you? What does success mean to you?
I think success means leaving an impact, a positive impact. That in anything you're doing. I think, you know, it's crazy because as I've worked my way up, you know, you start making more money and all this stuff, and then, but like, you know, I talk to some people who make a lot of money or not making any money, but the thing that I think motivates people or keeps people going is helping others. I think you get some kind of satisfaction, no matter what type of person you are. you may not show it, but you get some type of satisfaction by knowing you made a positive impact on somebody in their life. So success to me looks like that. I mean, I know that I hope that every person that I come in contact with, I've made some kind of positive impact on their life. But I mean, if I haven't, then I don't view that as being successful. I mean, I can win as many games or make as much money as whatever, but at the end of the day, I mean, I think that's what it's about.
And I think you probably have had an impact on most life. I would think so. Just knowing you or being around you and listening to you, I wouldn't think there's not a kid that you probably haven't touched or made an impact on their life. Where is your happy place? And you talked about wins and losses, like, or it could be just, man, bad day at practice. It could have been, you talked about with a recruit, like all the time you've invested into it, but like, it's like, all right, I gotta, I go read a book, I myself, I go to the movies, look at a movie by myself, in the theater by myself.
Yeah.
And like, my wife is like, you going to the movies by yourself, but like, where's your happy place?
You know what is crazy? Like, I don't really have a necessarily happy place. I think happiness is a state of mind. But I think like the most peace I have is on the airplane. But now they got Wi-Fi on the airplanes and stuff like that. You can connect if you want to, but like when I'm on the airplane, I'm just like I'm truly disconnected. So sometimes, like in this profession, you need that. Like you don't want to be on your phone, you don't want to be around your phone. You just kind of want to disconnect. But sometimes you get that feeling like, okay, oh man, I'm disconnected. Like what's going on out there now? Like in terms of recruiting or whatever. So like sometimes it's just good to just get away and just disconnect. So like for me, I think my happy place is just me sitting in silence, just peaceful.
I like that, man. Like, and it's funny because my wife always says, you can't ever put your phone down. And it's just habit for me. I don't think people understand like what your job, like that's part of your, it does become a part of your life. Social media, talking to a kid, texting with a kid, like it's hard to do. And she always say that, like, if you had to choose, I know you're not a self-promoter. That's one thing that I've noticed being around, or just listening to you, or people even talking about you. But like, if you had to choose 3 adjectives to describe yourself, which would you choose?
Shoot. Loyal. Say loyal. Patient. Yeah, I almost have too much patience. It's almost to a fault. Listener.
Okay.
Yeah, because I would say like a lot of people don't listen. Like a lot of people think, oh, Darris is quiet, he doesn't talk. But I'd rather listen, because a lot of times we get in trouble, especially in recruiting. We just start talking. Like like for example, like I'm calling you and you're a recruit, and I'm selling you I'm playing the point guard, and you don't really want to play the point. I'm just assuming you want to play the point. But why wouldn't I ask you first, and then you see what I'm saying? Like, so I think a lot of times we get in trouble because we don't ask questions and then listen.
So true, man. That is so true. I'm trying to think, like, what qualities, because I heard you before with the wood, but like, what qualities do you value in the people with whom you spend time?
I just want people that are around and create positive energy. Because I think the profession I'm in, I don't think it's a situation where you have a lot of time. So I don't look at it as quantity. Like when I have time to spend with people or whatever, I don't look at it as quantity. I look at it more so as quality. Because, for example, you can be with somebody for forever, but like, is it quality time or is it you just with them for a long time? And you know in this profession that's time there's not a lot of time to be wasted. So I just want positive people around. People I can trust, positive people, and people that aren't drains. There's a lot of people that just zap the energy out of you, and it's just like, you ask them how they're doing, and it's like doom and gloom. And I mean, yeah, I don't do well with those type of people.
I feel you on that. There's a few people I know like that.
Yeah.
What person and or event has had the most influence on your life?
The person, I would say my dad. My dad, he worked in a factory. I don't even know if my brother told you the story. He probably did, but he worked in a factory he just retired about 2 years ago. So worked in a factory for over 30 years as far as I can remember. And it wasn't, it's crazy. It wasn't until like a few years ago I talked to my high school coach, and he was like, your dad really hates that job or whatever. Or, he doesn't like working at that factory. But I couldn't tell. I could never tell because he never complained. And I mean, he might have complained in his head, but he didn't do it like outwardly. So I just saw how hard he worked, and I never heard him complain about anything. So that's kind of how I've lived my life. Like, I'm assistant coach in Florida, and like, what am I complaining about? And so he's had the biggest impact. What was the other part of the question? I sort of ran.
No, that was it. It was just like, it said or event. Or
event. The biggest event is when I got hurt playing in Europe. Couldn't play basketball again. That's what led me into coaching. That's the biggest event.
Okay. Now I'd like to end with this all the time. Like, I mean, you're young enough, but not young enough. But like, knowing what you know now, what would you tell your young self to prepare for as an assistant coach?
I would just tell them to be prepared for changes. I think this is year 10 for me coaching, and like from where I started to where I am now, a lot has changed in those 10 years in terms of like the climate of college basketball, like the rule changes, like, so a lot of the stuff that is changing now, you kind of have to prepare yourself for, like even like the one-time transfer rule. Like, you have to be prepared. Like, how are you going to adjust to that? Like, how is your recruiting going to change? Like, for example, like we have some scholarships in 2021, but I'm thinking like, why would we rush this if they change that rule? So my younger self, I would just say, just be prepared and stay and make sure you continue to read about the sport and where it's going or where you can possibly see it's going. Because I think if you study the NBA, you can kind of get a feel for where college athletics are going.
I agree with you on that, man. You're 100% right. Well, look, I want to thank you again, man, for being a guest on the show and being unmasked. Is there anything you want to leave the viewers with?
No, just kind of, I mean, the thing I said earlier, I think where we are in today's society, it's kind of the quote I used earlier, just, listen to learn, don't listen to respond. And I think it took a global pandemic for us to slow down and listen to each other. And you don't necessarily have to agree on anything, but just slow down and listen. Like, you don't always have to respond. And that's the main thing that, I try to tell our guys, but I mean, we need to do that as a society.
Well, you dropped a lot of nuggets today, man. You say you didn't have any more, but you had a few more. I'm gonna disagree with you on that. So it was awesome, man. It was powerful. Yeah. Like I said, thanks again. I want to thank you viewers for watching another great show. Stay tuned for the next guest as we get them unmasked. See you next time and stay safe.